What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of FPL Hotline. I'm your host, Matt Tomo, joined as always by C4, Gash, and Taz. What's up, guys?
What's up?
All right,
Hello.
so today figured we'd go over some basic FPL tips and tricks. We got a lot of new players probably here in the US and Canada. That was me just 2-3 years ago. There's a lot of things that I wish I knew when I was getting started. A lot of like little tips and tricks that I picked up along the way. So let's just go over that. All right, let's who wants to start us off?
I mean, Tomo, I think for you, rule number 1 is make sure you're awake an hour before the deadline to check for any team news.
Yeah, man.
And to set your line.
Well, I don't think we're getting team news anymore.
Well, we're not getting the leaks
They moved the deadline back.
Okay.
Back.
You guys say that now, but guaranteed we'll always be waiting 90 minutes before the deadline just to see if there's anything.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
the
I'm
first
gonna check.
game week or two, but a lot of the leaks
Yeah,
were
that's
like
what I'm
guys.
saying.
Okay, but a lot of the guys were in the media, so they get the lineups 15 minutes before the 60 that we normally get them. So by putting it 90, it's a lot less likely.
It's okay. Just to be safe, I'm getting up 90 minutes early.
If anybody could do it, it's FPL Rockstar. That's the big league man. All right, so let's start out with like a really basic thing is team structure. So obviously everybody's team structure is going to be a lot different, but more or less you guys can kind of share with the audience like where you kind of allocate the most of your funds or where you start off when you're setting up your team. Like what's your main focus? Taz, so where do you start off when you're setting up your team?
See, previous years I would try to fit in as many like big hitters as I could in my team, and it's still kind of like the main goal. You want to go into it now, but more so focusing on this year. My idea is to have make a very like adaptive and flexible team where I can you make your team at the beginning of the season, and then you're always like different players have form. You never know who's actually going to be the one that you want to have after game week 3 or 4. That's why like a lot of people use their wildcards early on, but this year I'm gonna try to avoid that. I'm gonna just try to make a flexible team where I can like transfer in any player I want within like the golden rule is within 2 moves, and that way I can if it's probably gonna end up where like half my team by game week 6 is gonna be already a little bit transferred out because of players that are hitting form. Maybe some are coming back from injury and stuff. So the big thing is to have it where like it's flexible. You can transfer in and out players.
So why are you doing that this year? Did you have a tough time last year with some transfers? It kind of pissed you off or what?
Yeah, well, like for example, this year there's so many premium assets in midfield, right? And then let's say you start off with all your all your forwards are 6 million, right? Or even you have 2 6 million forwards, and then you have 8.5 million forward, right? And then you go into the season after 2 game weeks, Harry Kane is on a tear, 5 goals in 2 games, and you want to have it for that third, game week 3 and on. And how you gonna transfer that in? It's really difficult if you don't have a premium forward in there. And it's the same thing like any other position. If you want to upgrade, a midfielder to somebody else, you have to kind of spread out the funds.
Yeah, you mentioned there's a lot of premium assets this year. I kind of noticed that going through the names. It seems like a lot more than usual. It's kind of hard to get a lot of those big names, and you need a lot more sneaky choices, to kind of round out your team. Gash, how about you? Where do you start off?
Normally, there are just 1 or 2 things I like to do in general, which are think of the formation I want to start off with, at least when before game week 1, because I think you have a lot of time to kind of put all the information together, and of course the unlimited transfers leading up to it. So typically, I think the best value formations are 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, trying to fit in the attacking players as much as possible. I think that kind of leading me toward that decision or the thought that I typically have, about 8.5 million in the goalkeepers, so a 4.5 and a 4.0, maybe a 5.0 some years if there's a really, really good option, but most of the time not even that much. And then a premium defender, 1 to 2 premium mids, and then 1 to 2 premium forwards. And kind of going off what Taz was saying, I think that really gives a nice balance to the team because, you don't have to sacrifice, 3 premium or even 4 premium midfielders if you can manage to do that. If you want to move that to a striker or a defender that's really high owned and is really everyone's starting to bring them in, then it's going to be that much tougher to do it. You're going to have to waste even more money on the transfer hits in order to get them into your team. So I think it's really about flexibility in the beginning.
Yeah. C4?
I mean, just touching on that flexibility point, I think this year when I'm when I've been looking at my team, I'm kind of more so worried instead of about bringing in different premium assets. I want to have every single player be able to play just because I think, I don't know, I'm preparing for COVID to play a huge part in people missing from the lineup. Like, I think with people playing Champions League games now during the Premier League season, already people are more lax about restrictions. It's not as uptight as Project Restart next year. I think that's potentially going to play like a huge role in building a team and making sure, okay, 2 of my midfielders are out. I need my bench players to play this week.
So you're focusing on. I know we had a question last week. Is your bench kind of a place to save money, or is it a place to have like good players? So for you, you really want to have good players this year? You think you're going to be using your bench and like rotating a lot?
Last year, when I built my team, outside of someone like Lundstrom and Sionku, all my fourth and fifth midfielder, my fourth and fifth defender, they were just, who's the lowest priced player in the game. I wanted the cheap enablers to bring in like the more expensive players. But this year, just keeping that in mind, I think, especially with how many good cheap options there already looks like there's going to be, it's worth it just to have that as a safety net going forward.
Yeah, I mentioned there's a lot of expensive options. There's also a lot of like pretty good cheap options to offset that. So yeah, it definitely makes sense. Taz, you want to add one more thing?
Yeah, coming back to like how C4 said, you want to have some good players on your bench. You also gotta make sure you're kind of building that team value up throughout the season. You have a lot of players that like start off pretty cheap and then they go on a tear and the price increases significantly. You want to be able to make sure you're constantly having players that like are performing. If you do, like, the worst is to get stuck with a player that's not playing or injured or underperforming and his price goes down. Then you try to transfer him out and then you can't afford the substitute you wanted to. Also, Gash talked about owning goalkeepers, like their cheapest value, and defenders. That's something you gotta structure a team also, where you don't want to be wasting like transfers on like goalkeepers or like defenders. No, only like transfer goalkeepers if they're injured or on a free hit or a wild card. So that's a big thing going into transfers. That's like the key thing for us, or like any FPL player really throughout the seasons, to like how I mentioned before, to adapt and to be able to transfer in and out players. There's a lot of, how you said, premium assets, and you will want to be you want to rotate them nicely throughout the seasons, and you don't want to be taking hits to transfer in some of these players.
Yeah. How much like effort do you put into watching the team value, and like, you ever like make a transfer just like thinking that the guy's going to raise in value the following week or something like that? That's a little crazy.
Yeah.
I know some people like kind of go like super hard with the value of their team, and I know others who like just don't care at all about that. Gash, what do you think?
Yeah, that's actually what I was wanted to bring up. So very nice transition there. But I think a lot of the time the team value and like your goal of scoring as many points as possible go right hand in hand, because those players that are scoring a lot are going to be the ones that are most highly sought after to bring into everyone else's teams. And I think it's even more important at the start of the season to kind of ride those bandwagons on those really high scoring players, or at least whoever's in form at the start, because then how with the FPL market, the transfer market, how it works. Every 0.2 you make on a player after bringing them in, you get 0.1 of that to use like a profit to spend on a future player. So I think the longer you have in the season to do something like that, the more flexibility you have in the long term, which is why you want to have the ability to move those players in really easily from the start.
So you want to start out with some of those premium options to avoid, like, I know we were talking about KDB is going to be a big threat for that. Right now he's at 11.5, right?
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are just dropping him for the game week 1 blank. So we might see him rise to like 11.6 or 7 even before he plays a game. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'd recommend people just keep continuously. There are multiple websites that'll give you like price rise predictors, and they're normally pretty accurate. So if you're ever afraid of one of those, I would just Google it and keep an eye on there.
Yeah, the Fantasy Premier League subreddit does that as well, I know, and they seem to be pretty good at predicting.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's move on a little bit here. So transfers, we've kind of touched upon that. That's a big thing. As you all know, you get 1 free transfer a week. or you can save it for a week and get 2 the following week, but no more than that. And if you go over your allocated free transfers, it's a minus 4-point hit. So I know me personally, I like to try to keep my transfers for 2 weeks. I like to have those 2 at a time. It helps me make moves a little better. I feel like it's kind of hard to go 1 for 1 sometimes, like one player for one player. So that's just me. I know I like to do 2 transfers at once if I can. C4, how you feel about that? What's your big transfer strategy?
I think this year I'm going to try to be more conscious of the fact to keep 2, just because I think last year I was setting myself up going into the double game week that didn't happen before everything ended. I kind of would have been screwed on transfers. I think I had none in the bank. I would have only had the 1 free one going into the double game week. Like I didn't plan it out at all without playing for a hit. This year, I think it's going to be interesting though in the first couple of game weeks, just because I feel like everyone's going to be using their 1 free transfer automatically to get a City or United player in. So
after that game week 1, absolutely, yeah.
Which I think goes back to the conversation of everyone wanting, or not everyone, but a large portion of people planning to use a wild card really early on.
Yeah, we'll touch upon wild card a little more later. But Gash, what do you think about the free transfers?
They're like there are kind of a couple of things I typically do whenever I'm thinking of transfers during the season or anything, and just like kind of general rules. I think one of the most important things to look at is like form versus fixtures. This big debate of, do I want a heavy hitting player who might be out of form, who's playing some easier fixtures, or do I want another player who's in form and scoring a lot, but it has some tough fixtures coming up? And for me personally, it's always you take both into account, but it's always form over fixtures. I think we've seen time and time again that players who are in goal scoring form can really just show up against anyone at any time. Whereas if you're looking at the fixtures for a player, it's really more so like they may hit it off against this team. I guess they have a higher chance of getting out of their rut against this team, but it's not necessarily as guaranteed as like a player in form who's really feeling good the way they're playing, kind of following out there. The other major thing I would say is that you kind of mentioned already the taking the hits. So if you use more than your free transfers, please believe me, they add up to so much more than you realize at the end of the season. Just this past season, I looked and I was like, I probably took about maybe like a minus 16 tops in the hits, and I think I had like a minus 32. So you don't even realize, just with how long the season is, it's so easy to forget at the start of the season when you're taking these -4s and -8s. And it actually came into, huge play for me because I came in 4th place in our mini league. Just by having fewer transfers, I was tied with the number of points as the guy in the place below me. So it worked out, really well in my favor because I just narrowly edged it. It's just, really something really important to remember is, are these the player that I want to take a hit for? Are they going to be in my lineup for multiple weeks, or is this a player I want to captain a couple times so that I'm getting double the points and not losing as many from the hit I've taken?
Yeah, it's almost like a hit could decide a mini league. 4 points.
Yeah, you might have some personal experience with that.
Yeah.
But form versus fixture is like a big debate that I see a lot, and I feel like it kind of, I feel like the quality of the player kind of has a big factor in that. Like if it's a premium player, then I kind of want to ride the form. Like I'm not scared of Vardy going up against one of the top 6 teams. Like if he's in good form, he's going to continue to score against those top 6 teams. Doesn't matter. But like when it comes to somebody like a 5.0 asset, like somebody like on the lower end of the spectrum there, I might play the fixtures a little harder than I play the form. Because that's just how it is for me. Taz, what are you thinking about transfers, man?
First, I'm gonna start off with never ever take a free hit unless, like how Gash said, you're gonna use them for at least solid 3 game weeks, if not more. You have to. Otherwise, there's no point. Like especially if you're like playing a mini league, those transfers at the end of the season can really hurt your chances of winning the league. In general, I think I maybe take 1 hit a season over the past like 3 seasons. I really try to I'm big on like stacking the 2 free transfers, and then that gives you more stability in transferring out 2 players. If you want to upgrade, instead of having a premium forward, you want to have a premium midfielder. Those 2 transfers let you have that. But besides that, another big thing is about when you keep in mind when you're having transfers is that like one mistake that I made in the past is like I was so quick to transfer out some of the premium players. If they didn't hit form right away for me, like after one game, I would like just transfer them out for somebody else that had really good form that week, and then ended up just hurting me. So big thing is that try to be like a little bit more conscious about your transfers and like give some of the premium assets a little bit more time for them to like settle in. Even though they have a good run of fixtures, like give them a little bit more game weeks to see how they perform. Because usually, with me, it was always like it would hurt me that I would transfer them out too quickly.
Yeah, some guys definitely deserve that extra game week or two chance to hit their form. I'm not transferring Salah out after one blank or something like that. So definitely that has an effect. C4, you got to follow up?
I wanted to pose a question then. Like we're talking about form over fixtures and not necessarily wanting to jump off of premium players too quick. But I think it's almost a common transfer for most people of Aubameyang after game week 2 out for a City or United asset. Like, is there not an argument like that? Is that an overreaction?
I don't think it's an overreaction because I think you're planning for it. I think it's because of the game weeks. Even if Alba does well, are you still planning on transferring him out for one of those City or United assets? I don't think it's an overreaction if it's like your plan all along. Like as of right now, my plan is to transfer Alba out for KDB right after the first game week. So no matter how Alba does, so I wouldn't call that an overreaction. But if I'm like bringing in, like I'm trying to have Salah from the start of the year, Salah has a rough first 2-3 weeks. I'm still going to ride with him for a little longer than that, So I don't think it's an overreaction specifically on Alba, specifically for this year because of the City and United game blanks. Taz, what do you think?
I kind of agree with that. It's also like, Alba is a premium player, but, Arsenal aren't the same level as City. So like when City are playing like almost any other team in the league, you expect them to do well. I think KDB had a lot of his like, I think he had a couple of his like double-digit hauls last season against like some of the top 6 teams, which was like, you expect him like like players like him and Sterling to perform like that. When you have Alba going up against the top 6 team, I expect him to get 1 goal at least, but that's not like it's not the same thing as me expecting KDB to get like 2 assists and a goal.
It's true,
another top 6 team.
There's some there's some players that are like fixture proof. Totally. I'm not sure Alba's like that. I'm not sure it's Alba's fault though. I think it's more Arsenal's fault. But we'll see. Yeah. I mean, the way they've been playing lately with Arteta, if they can keep this little run up, they're going to be dangerous.
So, are you guys telling me? Are you guys telling me that if Aubameyang returns the first 2 game weeks, you guys are still transferring him out?
As of right now, that's my plan. Yeah, just because I want KDB in my team. I don't really want Alba to start. Alba's just a placeholder for me.
Yeah, I think the big thing about this decision is that KDB was the highest scoring player in FPL last year, and to have looking at the rest of that City lineup, he's pretty much the one that's most nailed. You could argue Sterling maybe, but even the Sterling's returns then are less consistent. And you want like the most nailed player, probably the most creative player in that team, and playing every game for a Man City team that sometimes hauls on goals like 3, 4, 5 goals, even when the game's over, and that's like the ideal player you want in FPL. So that's just a really clear like set and forget type pick where you just get KDB into the team, and for pretty much the entire season, if he's performing like he did last year, you can just leave him locked in there.
Yeah, Taz.
Yeah, well, part of like the whole strategy of like bringing KDB in for like Aubameyang or any like Sterling Man City asset or even United asset if you want to downgrade even more, have extra money. It's also like that's another big thing about your team structure is like you want to plan out ahead. You don't want to bring in a premium player without knowing his fixtures a couple game weeks in advance, because then you might get stuck with like your premium players that you want to captain with them having really tough fixtures that none of them are like very favorable. So that's like kind of like looking at the bigger picture towards the sense of like I know that like Alba's gonna have a great 2 first game fixtures, then he's gonna have couple hard games, so then I wanted to bring in another asset that I'm more comfortable in playing during difficult fixtures. So it's kind of you want to look at your team for like current game week, the one you're in, but also look at ahead and see who's gonna be the ones you want to bring in, and and who you want to maybe transfer out. Maybe that's the big thing to keep in mind. Also, fixtures going forward.
Yeah, it's a big point. I'm always looking like at least 3 weeks ahead, 3-4 weeks ahead. When I'm bringing somebody in, I don't want to bring somebody in just for 1 week. If I'm bringing somebody in, I want to make sure they have a good stretch upcoming. So definitely take a look at your upcoming fixtures when you're making your transfers. Another thing, Taz, that you mentioned before the show when we were just talking, is that you pay attention to the ownership percentage a lot. That's a key factor for you in making your decisions. I know I like to look at that as well, but like, what's some of your mindset behind looking at that ownership percentage?
So I have two like kind of like varying thoughts about this. One is like, don't pay too much attention to ownership in your decisions. If you like have a gut feeling about like one player that he might not be the favorite like premium striker or whatever, but you feel like you like his underlying stats, stuff like that, go ahead with him, pick him. But I think player ownership comes really important in like your mini league if you're part of one, because like sometimes like everyone's riding like a very like the solid hype train or something like that in your mini league, and you want to like go for like in the beginning of the season, you kind of don't want to have too many differentials when you're picking your team. You want to have some of like the solid hitters that are going to return points and take a few risks here and there. But towards the end of the season, if you're really looking for the differential picks, like sometimes a player might be like owned highly by like the rest of the league, but in your mini league it might not be like a very high owned player. So that's something you got to keep an eye out for when choosing him. If you want to do a differential player, and also that comes into other aspects of like the game as well as like captaincy. So
yeah, I like there's got to be an argument to be made for differentials a little earlier in the year, though. No, because every game week counts the same. Maybe just feels a little different at the end. But what do you say about people trying to make differentials a little earlier on? Why do you stay away from that? Why is that something you focus on only at the end of the year?
I feel like early on you don't want. I mean, I personally wouldn't want to like go after like too many risks, because at the beginning of the season you kind of want to play out safe to see it, like have like more like kind of like information available to you about like teams lineups, teams like who's in form and who's not. And at the beginning of the season everyone's kind of starting off at the same level. With 0 points, it's kind of like no point to really have that many take that many risks. But at the same time, it's also like if you're winning your mini league or stuff like that, you want to a cheap way to do it is just to like see who are the other premium assets that everyone in your league is owning and transfer them in to make sure you have those points covered. If like you're in first place and you can see the three guys behind you all have Salah and like whatever other premium asset, maybe it's like Kane, and you see that like they're constantly switching between those 2 points, those two people, like the captain, you want to bring in those two players to make sure you got those points covered so they don't like jump ahead of you. So that's why I say like ownership is more important in my opinion in mini leagues, but when it comes to like just generally trying to go for the top 10K, it doesn't really matter.
So it looks like we kind of got into a discussion about ownership percentage and kind of got off topic a little bit there, but let's go back to ownership percentage. Gash, is that something you pay attention to?
Yeah, I think the important part about the ownership, I do think it's pretty important even in trying to get your overall rank all the way up. I think the most important thing is early in the season when you're thinking about these player ownerships that you have. You kind of mentioned it a few minutes back, but the way I think about it is that when you have players who are very highly owned at the start of the season and you're missing out on those points, you can get dragged so far down in terms of like, later in the season, you have to play catch up basically to the people who are, just riding these players in form. So I think the most important thing I've taken away is, the ownerships of players are, something it's like, I'm never going to make a decision based on that alone. Like, oh, this guy just has like, 33% ownership. Like I have to get him into my team. It's like, a really good point to kind of compare two players. If you're stuck between these two and you're looking at, say a Salah or a Vardy, and you can only fit one of them into your team. If you really, really want to maintain your current position or, keep going, you go with the higher ownership guys. So you're not taking too much of a risk. If you want to shoot for it, aim for the stars, go for that number 1 overall or try to beat Mr. Magnus Carlsen. Then you go with the more differential player and, see where it takes you. But I definitely think it's a really important thing to look at.
Yeah, it helps me a lot, especially when I'm trying to decide between some really cheap assets where I may not recognize all the names. if I know I need like a 4.0 defender just to round out my team and save some cash somewhere else, kind of helps me to just sort by 4.0, sort by percentage, and see, because I don't recognize a lot of those names, honestly. C4, what are you thinking? You pay attention to ownership percentage?
I mean, this year, just touching on what you said with the 4.0s, I'm just making sure I don't have a highly owned 4.0 who's just like bench fodder that gets immediately sold for a 4.0 that actually starts. Like, I think right now a lot of people could have Booster as their 4.5 forward, but the second people figure out, oh, you know what, he's not going out on loan, that's like an instant price drop coming in for someone who might actually start. But in terms of just like overall ownership, I don't think it's worth paying attention to early on in the season. I think for the first like 20 game weeks, you just want to put out the best team possible. Because like Gash said, it's a lot easier to go after the points instead of worrying about, a differential to catch up. Like,
that's true. Yeah. You kind of just.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's kind of like, at least for the first 20 game weeks or for the first half of the season, whatever you want to do, I feel like it's good to just focus on yourself and just build the best team you can build. And just do that every week, and then when you need to catch up in your mini league is when you need to start chasing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like by like week 20, 25, you kind of start seeing, okay, am I actually challenging for a high overall finish, or am I just challenging for my mini league? So I think for the four of us, like I think by game week, I want to say like once the restart happened, we all kind of knew that, okay, you know what, top 10K isn't really realistic. But so we're putting all our eggs in the mini league basket.
So it was actually like a distinction in your head between like going for the top leaderboards and going for your mini league? Because I kind of just tried to think.
Yeah, I think especially with how close mini leagues could get, I think there's a huge distinction. But if I had been going for just a high overall finish, I probably wouldn't have sold Ings right when the restart happened. That might just be a mistake in general.
That was a mini league move. Gotcha.
Yeah, like I think there's a bunch of moves we could all point to in our own transfer history that was like, yeah, that's a mini league move and not a overall move.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever made a mistake in a transfer. So, pretty perfect with that.
You just don't make transfers.
Yeah, well, I gotta save them up, stack them up for the 2 free transfers. The strategy. Moving on. Well, you pointed out real quick. You pointed at game week like 20 as like a round number to start paying attention to that. Is that the break? Is that the Christmas break around there?
I just threw that out. I feel like
it's a little after Christmas usually.
A little after Christmas. Okay, yeah, that seems like a good time.
I think a better time would probably be whenever you choose to use your second wild card. I think when you use that second wild card, you have a pretty good idea of where you're going with it, because you're either using it to improve your team for an overall finish, or you're doing it because you see you're running into problems in your mini league. That's just my point of view.
Yeah. So we'll get into chips in a second, but I just want to talk about one more thing when it comes to your general team structures, and that's captaincy choices. Captaincy choices is one of the most frustrating aspects of fantasy Premier League, of course. Taz, I know you know the pain of that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your captaincy choices?
Well, I can either.
Why don't you tell us what not to do? I
don't know. 2 seasons ago, I had a great run of captaincy picks, and then this past season, it's just been terrible. I had half my game weeks were almost blanks compared to my captains. I had like some other attacking player return more points, and the captaincy is one of the biggest things also when it comes to like doing well just in FPL. You gotta it really makes or breaks your total score at the end of the season. But for me, one of the biggest things was that you gotta go with more of the safer players. I feel like last season, I kind of like towards the end after I had so many blanks with like trying to captain not a premium player, someone like below like the next tier under them. If I just went towards the end of the season, I was just writing KDB, and like early on, like before that, I was like Salah when they were doing pretty good. So one of my tips is you got to be really smart with your captaincy. I like when it comes to like the whole form over fixture type things also could be brought into captaincy. Do you go with a captain or a player who's in great form right now or has a great fixture, That's something that goes down to you to decide. But I feel like for me this season, I'm gonna go with the player more in form and the more premium player because they're just more guaranteed to bring in points.
Yeah, I know. I think on last week's episode, or maybe the other episode, C4, you mentioned that you were thinking about doing a set and forget captain, which shocked me. It sounded pretty stupid. Are you still thinking about that?
I have, yeah, just because I think when I got frustrated last year at the way the season ended, thinking, oh, you know what, post restart, like my captains completely let me down. I was just thinking about how, like, okay, we put so much stress into picking a captain, and it's basically a coin flip at some point. Like, it's either way it happened or not. You can put yourself in a position to succeed all you want. You can put Salah captain against Norwich at home, like it can still fall flat on your face. So what I did is I took Magnus Carlsen's profile. And I just calculated, okay, you know what, how many captain points did he get? A top 10 finisher, and it was pretty much the equivalent of if you had captained KDB every single week for the entire season. I know that
points, right?
Yeah, like I don't know, KDB finished with 240. His captaincy got him around that or whatever. In my mind, it was like, okay, you know what? That's not a perfect thing. Like, you don't want to captain KDB the entire season because, there's games where he's going to be rotated and stuff. But if I told you, okay, you know what? I'm going to captain Salah for every single game that he's projected to start, and then my other captains are going to be a KDB, a Sterling, and Aguero, like a premium who I don't even have to think about. They're just my substitutes for that captain pick. I think it's a lot less stressful, and I think you're also guaranteeing yourself because I think part of the reason that it's hard to captain premium players, or the hardest part about it, is that they're fixture proof. How many times has Salah, blanked a couple of game weeks and then he goes off against someone that you wouldn't have projected him to go off against? The points you're missing out on there by not just leaving captaincy on him and waiting to cash in on when he does, I think there's some validity to that.
It's interesting. I don't think I've ever read about anybody trying that or anything, but like the way you explained it, I get it. I don't know. Gash, what do you think?
I'm going to take a kind of a different approach. I'm going to list off 2 or 3 things that have really burned me in the past, and I'm going to tell you not to do these things. In roughly, the things that have cost me the least to the greatest, so the least first, I will say we kind of talked about differentials. I've been guilty of trying to pick differential captains too early in the season. Really trying to go after those, low percentage owned guys and trying to make up ground that way. And it really hasn't worked out for me too well because either I'll pick someone with like a premium on their team and I don't pick the premium player, and the premium player ends up scoring more, and it just, it makes me feel awful. The boring captain choice, I think Taz kind of touched upon. And they're a boring captain choice for a reason. It makes sense to captain them. Don't overthink it. And that goes back into the differential thinking because, it's really, a lot of times it shouldn't be too hard to pick a captain. You really should only have maybe 3-ish players every game week you're deciding between. The number one decision, I will, I've done this time and time again, and I'll say I'm not going to do it again, and I probably will anyway. Don't make any captain decisions when you're drunk late night right before the deadline. Okay? I can't tell you how many times where I'm thinking, in my head, I'm like, I guess I decided on my captain earlier, but Todd Cantwell, Newcastle's playing pretty poorly these past couple of weeks. Like, I think he, 2 goals and an assist or something. It basically never works.
Todd Cantwell, did you really?
No, I didn't. But that's just an example of something that would cross my mind.
You must have been drinking too much if you're gasping Todd Cantwell.
The only times those kind of decisions work are when you're, drunk, triple captaining Michael Antonio against Norwich in like the game week 30 whatever that he scored 4 goals, and that oh god, that
doesn't happen.
I'm not saying I was even remotely close to thinking about that. I'm saying those are the kind of calls you need to make to go in your favor in order for that to pay off. So really, just most of the time, try to stay away from that. I know I won't, but Maybe you can do better.
It sounds like it's more of a problem of you just shouldn't make your picks before you drink. It sounds like it's alcohol.
But then you miss out on the added excitement and maybe something you didn't
It
have
is fun.
the balls to do beforehand. Like now you have like I can do this. I can pick whoever the hell I want, Captain.
Yeah. Fuck it, Todd Cantwell.
Yeah, come on,
Taz.
Yeah, but like the biggest thing that like hurt me before that I like stopped doing last season was that I love like seeing like who else like in my own mini league was like captaining, and I just like from now on I don't really pay attention to see who else captains, just focus on my own team, and I'm like, okay, who do I believe is gonna score me? I'm mostly always limited to just the premium players, and see which one of them do I believe is gonna return more points that game week, because like that has happened to me prior years where I'm just like seeing, I'm like, oh, I want to captain like this player, but then I see somebody else has like been captaining them recently in my mid league, and me and him are close in the standings. Then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go for a differential pick. Just I believe knows better than just unless it comes down to like the ending when you're trying to catch up with somebody, you want to stay with like who do you think is gonna perform best for you.
Yeah, I mean, I finished. What did I finish? 6th in our mini league, right? I think 6th. So maybe I shouldn't talk, but like I didn't pay that much attention to what everybody else was doing. I know a few kids in our league, shout out Sid, would like really be, pestering people for their choices and like trying to get people's lineups like beforehand, trying to like sneak into your phone and shit. Like, I don't know. I just feel like at least for the first like 30 something game weeks, as long as you focus on yourself, like I feel like you're good. You're good to go. Maybe I'm wrong. I did come in 6th, so you guys all finished above me. So C4, why don't you tell us what you?
I mean, at least you didn't offer to pay someone to leak another league member's lineup. That's all I'm going to say.
I did receive a bribe like that.
Was it the boy Sid?
I can neither confirm nor deny those rumors.
Shout out Sid. Hope you're listening.
I just wanted to follow up. So as I was browsing our FPL today, came across a pretty interesting post from, his name was Professional Foul. He basically broke down from the 1K what type of captaincy choices did those 1K make. And week to week, usually someone in the 1K captained someone who was around 40% captainship, which I think kind of lends itself to a conversation of, should we go into a season having a very narrow list of who we want to captain game week in and out? Because based on this top 1K, differential picks don't necessarily lead you to getting into a high finish. So like, this is more of a question to all you guys. Like, if I had to say right now, like, who would I not hesitate to captain in any game week and who is on my short list for the season? It'd be Salah, KDB, Sterling, Aguero, and Fernandez.
I mean, yeah, those are pretty big captain choices there.
I mean, would you add anyone onto that?
Someone that you can like captain pretty consistently.
I'm saying only sticking to that list for the entire season. That way, you avoid any situations where you're making a drunk decision to triple captain Pookie or something.
Pookie, I miss the Pookie parties. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's tough. Taz, what do you think?
I believe last season the couple times that blanked for me was when I instead of captaining the premium asset of like Salah or Aubameyang, I tried to go for a differential of like captaining Jimenez, who had a good fixture, and then he just didn't return points in that fixture for me. So like I believe that this season, I feel comfortable with 4 or 5 players that I can say I can consistently captain throughout the season. I believe you shouldn't be taking too many risks, especially early on with your captaincy choices. You wanna go with safe bets like Salah, KDB. Even I would consider Kane a pretty safe pick. And then you wanna you're gonna have to have cheap options elsewhere in the team. You can't build a team of premium assets, and I feel like that's where you want to take chances on in your cheap assets elsewhere that you have to build your team with.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Good.
Don't make any drunk decisions.
Yeah. All right, moving on to chips. So you get 4 chips, right? Yeah. You get you get 4. So you get 2 wild cards, a free hit, and a bench boost. And the first wild card has to be used by game
Triple
week.
captain.
And the triple captain. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So it is. So it's 5 technically. 5 chips. So
Well, it's 3
when you have
chips
to
and you
use,
get the wild card.
fuck man, I'm so confused right now. All right, let me.
It's
So you get a free hit. You get 2 wild cards, a bench
Yeah.
boost, and a triple captain.
Yeah,
There
but
we go. Okay, so it's 4, but you get one of them twice.
yeah, but no, the
Yeah?
wild card's not count as a chip.
All right.
It's 3 chips and you get 2 wild cards.
Restart the episode.
Restart the whole episode.
Run it back.
Whole episode.
All right, so let's just start with the wild card chips. So you get 2 of those a year. One has to be used before, it's like before Christmas, but I think it's like a specific game week, right? Isn't it like 16?
It's game week 16 here.
Yeah, so they change it every year. So this year you have to use your first wild card by game week 16, and the second one you can use whenever you want before the end of the year. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I know personally I like to play my first wild card pretty early, like 4 weeks in, about 4 or 5 weeks in, maybe like 3 weeks in, just to kind of see like who's running shit this year and like who's playing well this year, who's playing a big role, Gash, so when do you use your first wild card?
Yeah, my first one I'll typically, of course, the main strategy, kind of like you just highlighted, is to use it, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks in, and you see kind of a template team start to form. So, players who are doing well, or maybe who are playing in a way you didn't expect. But I think actually, something I've tried to do in the past, but I'm putting even more focus on this year, is just trying to save that first wild card for later in the season, maybe even into the teens, because I think it's just so valuable if you can keep it until then. If you think about it, if you use the wild card, if you're somehow able to use it like game week like 13 to 15, right before the deadline, you're kind of setting your team up for success for the second half of the season, whereas everyone else has used their wild card, 10 or so game weeks earlier. So it kind of makes it, that much better for yourself. And you also give yourself a shorter window for that second wild card. So whenever you do decide to use it, you're not, like using it in January and trying to predict until May. So I think, one of the things I'm going to focus on this year is really trying to push back that first wild card use.
And the only way you can do that is starting off with a good team, really, putting a lot of
and as we say in FPL, try to score as many points as you possibly can.
That's how you win the game. C4.
So last year I actually got pretty lucky with, I think, by having Lundstrom, KDB, Ings, and Sionku from the beginning of the season, that I wasn't forced to make early wild card. And I think by using the same strategy of, picking cheap enablers and premium assets, that I won't have to do that this season either. But to me, I think this season, for 2 reasons, there's more of a reason to keep your wild card. First one being, I think I mentioned it before, COVID. I feel like there's a huge potential for us just to run into one game week where all of a sudden, you have 4 or 5 players drop like flies. And I think as long as, we all have our transfer strategy for the first couple of game weeks, and it sounds like we can go without using our wild card. So I think there's just that incentive to keep onto it just because of that. I think can you imagine like everyone else in the mini league, they use their wild card early, and then you're that one guy who kept it just because you knew this was a possibility. Then, Man City, Chelsea traveling back from Europe, all of a sudden they have like a couple players out, and then everyone else is screwed.
Could be. Sounds like you're going to try to be that guy in the mini league.
Yeah, I'm going to be that guy. And the second reason, don't want to get too much into this, to keep my wild card this year, is because, if Lionel Messi joins
I can tell by the way you're smiling.
If Lionel Messi joins the league, everyone's team is fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the transfer deadline's by like game week 4, so
it's October.
Still,
5th.
Okay, if everyone uses their wild card game week 2 or 3 and he comes in later, I think that's like you're just asking for trouble there.
I wouldn't do like make a move in anticipation of that, like Messi. I wouldn't.
I mean, that's just more
if
of
you're
a
ready
silver
planning on
lining
saving,
to my strategy.
Yeah, if you're ready to plan on saving the wild card, fine, but don't save it just like hoping for Messi. I don't know.
Yeah. Plus, I think we'll have much clearer indications. I think it'll be sorted at least like, a week or maybe even two before the deadline, whether Messi's even going to be allowed to move anyway.
Right.
Because
Yeah, he might have to. They might honor or force Barca to keep that 700 million euro release clause, and who the hell is going to pay that?
Yeah, right.
I feel like it could get messy. Lawyers are getting involved in everything already. Oh shit! I wasn't even trying to make that joke. Oh man, that's awesome. I really wasn't trying to make that joke. Man, I'm a genius. Taz, what are you thinking about your wild cards, man?
I'm going with the same train of thought here as Gash. Previous years, I've always kind of used my wild card early on. Like the way I set up my team is, have the best team for the first 4 game fixtures, kind of take, maybe risk there in terms of players that, maybe like you think will perform well because of the fixtures, and then change the team around. But, that kind of hurt me several times later on in the season when I want to restructure my team. And, like I have to save up multiple transfers to do that. This year, I think I'm going to try to hold off as late as possible and use my first wild card. And part of it comes into like thinking of here is like trying to like minimize the amount of like risky players I bring on to start my season. I want to get more of like I know these guys are gonna either start, or I know these guys are gonna be like definitely giving me points. And then if a player does come into form, some people don't feel comfortable, bringing in like Chelsea assets that like were recently transferred in, and Ziyech and Timo Werner. It's okay if you don't do something like that, but as long as you have ways to like transfer one of them and have a flexible team. Even after 2 game weeks, if one of them hits form, you'll be able to transfer them in and not have to fully wild card and like change around your full team.
Yeah, that's a good point you made there at the beginning. There, you said what is it that you said again? What was that?
No, wanting to take your risks, but the what's the name?
Like if you're right. If you're taking your wild card game week 3, game week 4, then you can take some more risks at the beginning of the year. Thinking like, oh, worst comes to worst, I'll just have this guy for 3-4 weeks. That's a good thing to keep in mind. Coming into this episode, I was pretty set on taking that wild card early, but you guys made some good arguments. I'm gonna have to try to hold on to it a little bit. Let's move on now to the free hit. So the free hit basically is a wild card, but just for 1 week, and then it resets back to your old squad. I feel like this came in handy for me last year with some of those double game weeks towards the end of the year and the blanks and stuff. There was 1 week where like 6 or 8 teams, I think, were blanking, maybe like game week 35, 36 around there or something. And that was a really ideal spot for the free hit for me. So I've done that my first 3 years playing FPL. I've saved the free hit for one of those last few weeks when we get those blanks and stuff. What do you guys do? Gash?
Yeah, no, kind of just like what you said, typically either a blank game week with, multiple teams missing. So not just, like you're a 2 or a 4, but a bigger blank game week, or, even like a double game week where there are maybe like, really, really juicy fixtures for only a couple of teams, and you really want to load up on those players. I think you'd be really helpful. So I do think saving the free hit for later in the season is really useful, especially because, in those game week 30s, you always have like the FA Cup fixtures that'll come in and, really mess up the schedule. So you always have opportunities there you want to be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's usually like game week like 31 on, 30 on, like around there, because you got FA Cup and you got Champions League and everything going on all at once.
Yeah, it starts feeling weird.
Yeah, so definitely save your free hit for that is what I'm saying. It's what you're saying. C4, you agree with us?
Yeah, free hit, I feel like, was invented by the FPL gods as an apology for not counting for fixture congestion and when fixtures get moved. So
yeah, that my thoughts exactly. I was gonna say the same.
That's all I need to say.
Taz?
Yeah, the best thing to do is hold off your free hit until towards the end of the season, where you have blanks or even double game weeks where you want to just a specific lineup for that game week alone. And same thing with like when it comes to other chip bench boost, it's where your bench players, actually the points they score counts towards your score for that game week. And that's another one that I like to save off until, those double game weeks where, having those cheaper players that playing 2 games now is more enticing to actually, put them into your team and have them score some points. And it's actually pretty good if, you can pair it up with a wild card or something like that.
Yeah, I actually have never successfully used my bench boost like properly. Like it's always a situation where I just have like some bench fodder, like some shit players that were helping me save funds elsewhere, and then I use a bench boost and they don't even play. Like that's happened all 3 years. I think I had one dude. I think I had Saka playing on my bench for my bench boost this past year, and he got like 1 point for playing. So yeah, I've never properly used the bench boost. So any advice that you guys have would be really appreciated.
Yeah,
Gosh.
I can. What I will say is, I don't mean to call you out or anything, but if you didn't use your bench boost properly this past year, it's going to be pretty hard to do it in upcoming years. We had literal like unlimited transfers leading into game week 30 with the double game week there. So for that was a City Arsenal, and I really question your choices if you're not using your bench boost there when you have unlimited transfers without needing to use a wild card to prepare for it.
Well, you see, man, like there was like a pandemic and stuff, and I was like worried, and I just kind of forgot about FPO for a bit. So yeah, so that's where I fucked up, I guess. Thank you for pointing that out.
Anytime.
But it's not always something so clear, Like sometimes it's a lot more messy. Sorry, C4. What do you think, man?
I'm thinking I need to get a soundboard just to play something whenever you make a silly pun.
Yeah. All right, next episode.
Well, I'll work on that.
All right,
I want Aguero on there for sure.
Aguero.
Yeah, but just thinking off of bench boost, this is purely anecdotal, but besides using it for a double game week, I think the only other time I've seen it work for people is for people who aren't good in FPL and they have good players sitting on their bench.
Yeah, right.
It's
I think it's the worst chip. I'll just say that it's the worst chip.
If I had to guess, a bench boost probably on average has the lowest variance for people. Everyone's using it for a double game week, and they're all using it on $5 or $6 million players that they could fit in through the team.
Well, that comes into planning. You don't have to, having a wild card in your disposal either, to set up your team beforehand for a double game week or even afterwards. You honestly all you need is 3 game weeks in advance to set up a team where you don't have to be the cheapest 4.5, 5 million players. You can, downgrade maybe one of your assets at 12 million has 3 tough fixtures, and it comes into the question of form versus fixture, but you might want to downgrade him to someone in the range of 8 to 9 million, and then you can upgrade 2 to 4 million players to 6 million players that are pretty decent going into bench boost and to use that bench boost. So I think just bench boost, the reason why I think it's one of the harder chips to use is because it requires way more planning than the other chips.
Yeah, way more planning. You either got to line it up with a wild card beforehand or something. Yeah, good point. So moving on to the triple captain, the last chip. Actually, we have a fan question this week about the triple captain. So just do a quick shout out to at Yuri99 on Instagram. He asks us when you suggest using the triple captain. C4, you want to take that first?
Honestly, when should you use it? You should have some sort of either a dice, a cat, and they'll just pick what game week you use it. I think it's the most stressful chip because it's all pure luck. I'm using mine game week 1. That's it.
I know a lot of people actually use it game week 1. I feel like there's always 1 or 2 score lines game week 1 that are just blowouts. Whether it's teams not ready for the season or whatnot. I just feel like there's a good chance for a lot more goals in the first game week. I feel like it takes defenses a little more time to get accustomed together too if there were new signings. So I feel like game week 1 is a good bet. I think in the past few years I've used it the last game week. But yeah, sorry, you can continue about your point.
My logic was the first game week usually has more goals in it. But at the same time, for the past 3 or 4 years, whenever I've planned out my triple captain, it's never worked out. So I feel like
you kind of want to just get it out of the way.
Yeah, because what's the point of trying to plan it out if it never works?
And maybe you jump out to a huge lead.
That's some pretty poor planning.
Triple captain Salah game week 1.
Yeah.
Now that's some pretty poor planning since we already know that both Manchester teams are already guaranteed to have a double game week later on in the season. You can triple captain somebody now, but I would much rather triple captain Fernandes but I would go with a safer pick of KDB later on in the season.
I tried that last year. I think it was I triple captain Aguero during a double game week. He didn't end up playing. So my vice captain, who was also in a double game week, Aubameyang, that didn't work out. So I don't know what to tell you, man.
I know, but
it.
it's a calculated risk. I would rather double down on the double game week instead of one game week. But at the same time, there's you could have triple captain the KDB last game of the season and gotten crazy haul. So
yeah.
Didn't a lot of people triple captain Sane earlier last year, and he just completely shit the bed?
It was Mane was the big one this year.
It was Mane.
Sane was the year before. Okay,
yeah.
Can I just make you a bet?
What's the bet?
I want to bet you that my triple captain's way outs were your triple captain this year.
Okay, well, I'll only make that bet if you triple captain your guy game week 1 or.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, then I'll make that bet.
And
we'll talk about the details on the side, and then we'll bring this back into next week's episode.
Maybe we'll ask some of our listeners if they got some good ideas for the bet. Gash, you have a good idea for your triple captain?
Yeah, my good idea for my triple captain is to, kind of just use it at a random time when there's a double game week probably, or I'm feeling really good about a fixture. I think the triple captain is the least useful of the chips that we have. The bench boost will give you, multiple players going on there, and I think it's more evenly distributed in terms of, scoring points among your team. Same with the free hit, you're building that whole new team, so you have a really a wide variety of players to choose from, including fixtures and everything. But the triple captain, is you can triple captain some guy with a double game week, and Mane, he'd get hurt. Like Sane the other season, he could just blank and barely come into another game. So it's really, for me, the biggest crapshoot. So I guess giving myself the best chance would just be trying for a double game week for a solid player, but if not, then just based on, kind of a gut feeling, I think.
All right. Yeah, we just got one more fan question that I want to get to. Shout out to at Jake_O_S30 on Instagram. Jake asked, how many Man City or Man United players are you keeping on your bench in game week 1? C4?
0.
Gash?
As of right now, 0. I might have 1.
Taz?
0. Right now, the only people I would consider is either Foden or Greenwood, just because they're cheap price. Besides that, I can't justify spending $11.5 million on Sterling to keep him on the bench when I could use that money elsewhere on my team to then later transfer him in.
Not
Absolutely.
I just went for the other guy.
That's just tough. That's tough to leave 11.5 on your bench.
Yeah, it's too much money on the bench. Not worth it.
As of right now, I'm gonna have Foden on the bench game week 1. I don't mind leaving 6 on the bench. It doesn't hurt as bad. All right. Any final thoughts? Any golden rules? Any helpful tips? If you could give one tip to a brand new FPL player, what would it be? Gash? Sorry, I kind of put you on the spot.
No. Yeah, no, but I'm a quick thinker. It's okay. Don't shoot yourself in the foot early trying to go for glory.
That was really well put. That was a good sentence. Taz?
Damn, go off Gash. That's a tough one. But for me, I would say the biggest one is do your research, but don't overdo it. Don't do it to the point where you can't even decide on something, or you're stuck on something. But definitely get informed about the players. FPL, the subreddit is great, but even just the FPL website posts a bunch of great articles always.
Or there's that new podcast, FPL Hotline. Yeah,
exactly. It's probably the best one, but I don't know. But yeah, no, I definitely just I would say to do your research, but don't overdo it.
C4?
2 things: set your lineup and watch.
I said one. Okay. And my one thing is buy an alarm and remember to set your fucking lineup. All right. So thank you, Taz, Gash, and C4. That wraps up episode 3. If you guys have any questions, as always, call the hotline or send us a question through Twitter or Instagram. Our DMs are always open. Follow us. Make sure you join our mini league. We just shared the code again today, and as always, it's in our bio. And thanks, guys, and see y'all in a couple days.
Later, guys.
Peace.